Long before the great empires, before the names Greece and Rome echoed through history, Europe was a land of mystery, wild, untamed, and shaped by the forces of nature. This is the story of its dawn, of how scattered tribes and ancient builders laid the groundwork for everything that was to come. Tens of thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, vast glaciers covered much of the northern continent. Early humans, the Neanderthals and later Homo sapiens, roamed these rugged landscapes. They weren't just surviving, they were adapting. They hunted mammoths, reindeer, and bison, crafting tools from stone and learning to control fire. In caves across France and Spain, places like Lascaux and Altamira became their canvases. Here they painted vivid stories of life, struggle, and the world they observed, the very first sparks of human creativity on European soil. Around 10,000 BCE, as the ice began to retreat, the world changed. The climate softened, forests spread, and a revolution began to reshape human life. In southeastern Europe, in the lands that would one day become Greece and the Balkans, farming communities appeared. Instead of chasing herds, people learned to cultivate the land, growing wheat and barley. They domesticated animals and, for the first time, built permanent homes. Villages formed, marking the first real steps toward organized society. With agriculture came surplus, and with surplus came trade. A web of connections began to form across the continent. From the Danube Valley to the Iberian Peninsula, people traded obsidian, salt, and tools, connecting cultures that had once lived in isolation. New technologies like pottery and weaving transformed daily life. Slowly, early social hierarchies began to emerge, hinting at the complex societies that lay in the future. By 3000 BCE, a new chapter of human ingenuity was written in stone. Across Western Europe, megalithic cultures rose, constructing massive monuments that defy time. Stonehenge in Britain, the Carnac stones in France, and the dolmens of Ireland still stand as silent witnesses to their vision and skill. These weren't just random piles of rock. They reveal a deep understanding of astronomy and a remarkable capacity for communal effort. These monuments symbolized not just religion, but unity, proof that human beings could work together toward a shared, monumental purpose. While stone circles were rising in the north, two extraordinary civilizations began to flourish in the south, in the brilliant blue of the Aegean Sea. First came the Minoans on the island of Crete, around 2000 BCE. They built grand palaces like Knossos, adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting sea life, rituals, and dance. Their economy was powered by maritime trade, connecting them to Egypt, the Near East, and beyond. The Minoans gave Europe its first taste of urban sophistication. Following them, the Mycenaeans emerged on mainland Greece around 1600 BCE. Influenced by the Minoans but far more militaristic, they built fortified cities, worshipped powerful gods, and left behind incredible treasures buried in royal tombs. But their most enduring legacy was myth. The Mycenaeans gave rise to the heroic tales that would echo through Greek mythology, inspiring epics like the Iliad and the Odyssey. These stories, blending history with legend, preserved the values of courage, honor, and destiny that would one day define Western civilization. By the end of the Bronze Age, Europe had been transformed. Trade routes stretched across continents. Knowledge spread through contact with the great civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Metallurgy, writing, and navigation were all advancing. Beneath it all, Europe was preparing for a new dawn, one that would give birth to philosophy, democracy, and empire. The prehistoric and early Bronze Age societies laid the foundation upon which all of Europe's future achievements would stand. This was the dawn of Europe, a continent awakening to its potential, setting the stage for the rise of the Greeks, who would take human thought to heights the world had never seen. In the land surrounding the Aegean Sea, a new kind of civilization emerged, one built not just on power or wealth, but on ideas. The Greeks transformed the way humanity understood itself, the universe, and the meaning of community. Their legacy would shape the very foundations of the world we live in today. The story really takes off around the 8th century BCE, as the Greek city-states, or polis, began to form. Each city-state was a world of its own, independent, proud, and fiercely devoted to its customs. Among them, two giants would emerge, Athens and Sparta, rivals in spirit and purpose. Athens valued knowledge, art, and democracy. Sparta revered discipline, strength, and obedience. Together they reflected the dual nature of the human condition, the timeless balance between mind and might. It was in Athens, under visionary leaders like Solon, Cleisthenes, and Pericles, that the first form of democracy known to humankind was born. In the open-air assemblies, citizens gathered to debate laws, decide policies, and guide their own future. Though it was limited to free men, this was a revolutionary idea, the principle that ordinary people could govern themselves. In those bustling forums, the voice of the citizen was heard for the first time. At the same time, Greek thinkers began to ask the most profound questions about life, existence, and the universe. Philosophy, the love of wisdom, became a defining feature of their culture. Socrates taught his students to question everything, to seek truth through reason. His disciple Plato imagined a world of ideal forms and perfect justice. And Aristotle, Plato's own student, explored logic, science, and ethics, laying the groundwork for centuries of intellectual pursuit. These weren't just abstract thinkers. They were architects of thought, building the framework that would guide the world for millennia. Beyond the realm of ideas, the Greeks celebrated the human form and spirit through art and sport. The Olympic Games, first held in Olympia around 776 BCE, united the fractious Greek world in peaceful competition. Sculptors and painters captured the perfection of the human body, blending breathtaking beauty with mathematical proportion and realism. The Parthenon, standing tall and serene above Athens, became the ultimate symbol of harmony, balance, and the human capacity to achieve greatness through order. Greek drama also flourished, with playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides exploring timeless themes of fate, justice, and the human struggle against destiny. Through tragedy and comedy, the Greeks examined themselves, their flaws, their ambitions, and their moral limits. The theater was more than entertainment. It was a mirror reflecting the complexity of the human soul. As Greek culture matured, its influence was destined to spread. Under Alexander the Great, the brilliant son of King Philip II of Macedon, the Greek world expanded dramatically. In less than a decade, Alexander conquered a vast territory stretching from Greece to Egypt and deep into Persia, creating one of the largest empires in ancient history. But his greatest conquest wasn't military, it was cultural. Wherever he went, he spread Hellenism, the blending of Greek language, art, and philosophy with local traditions. Great cities like Alexandria in Egypt became international centers of learning, where scientists, astronomers, and philosophers worked side by side, pushing the boundaries of knowledge. The Greek world had reached its zenith. It had given humanity democracy, philosophy, science, and art, a legacy so vast that no empire could erase it. And though Greece's political power would eventually wane, its spirit endured. A new power was rising in the West, one that would absorb Greek knowledge and use it as the backbone for its own civilization. The age of the Greeks was a turning point in the story of humanity. They taught Europe to think, to question, to create, and to aspire. And their wisdom would light the path for the empire that was about to dominate the ancient world. Rome, the great builder of Europe. Our tale of Roman Empire begins around the 8th century BCE on the banks of the river Tiber in what is now Italy. Legend tells us of twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned and raised by a she-wolf. But behind the myth lies a more extraordinary truth. A small community of shepherds and farmers destined to unite a continent. This settlement grew into a republic, fueled by relentless ambition, strict discipline, and an unshakable belief in its own destiny. The Roman Republic was a marvel of governance, blending elements of monarchy and democracy. Power was shared between the Senate, elected magistrates, and citizen assemblies. This unique structure provided the stability and flexibility that allowed Rome to expand its rule across the Italian peninsula and far beyond. Yet, this very ambition planted the seeds of future conflict. As Rome's borders stretched, so did its hunger for power. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome had triumphed over Carthage in the brutal Punic Wars, securing dominance over the entire Mediterranean. The city of Rome became the vibrant heart of a burgeoning empire, a bustling metropolis overflowing with trade, wealth, and people from every corner of the known world. But this rapid growth created deep social tensions. The gap between rich and poor widened, and political corruption became rampant. Out of this turmoil, titans of history emerged: Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, all vying for control of Rome's future. The rise of Julius Caesar signaled the end of the Republic. A brilliant general and master strategist, he conquered Gaul, famously crossed the Rubicon River, and declared himself dictator for life. His assassination in 44 BCE, intended to save the Republic, ultimately sealed its fate. From the ensuing chaos rose his adopted heir, Octavian, who would become known as Augustus, Rome's very first emperor. His reign marked the birth of the Roman Empire. What followed was the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, an era of unprecedented prosperity and stability that lasted for over 2 centuries. This was an age of grand achievement. Roman engineers constructed vast networks of roads, aqueducts, and bridges, connecting distant provinces from Britain to Egypt. Their cities were wonders of urban planning, featuring magnificent amphitheaters, temples, public baths, and bustling markets. The Colosseum, in all its glory, stood as a powerful symbol of their architectural genius and imperial might. But perhaps Rome's most enduring gift was its system of law and governance, which became the foundation for many modern legal systems. Rome's greatness wasn't built on military force alone. It was a master of cultural absorption, blending Greek philosophy, Egyptian art, and Persian administrative techniques into something new and uniquely Roman. Latin became the language of government and scholarship, while the offer of Roman citizenship was extended to conquered peoples, creating a shared identity that unified a diverse empire for centuries. Religion also evolved under Rome's vast influence. The traditional pantheon of gods, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, reflected the empire's core values of strength and honor. But in the 1st century CE, a new faith began to spread quietly from the eastern provinces: Christianity. Initially persecuted, this new religion would eventually be embraced by Emperor Constantine, forever changing the spiritual heart of Europe. But even the mightiest empires are not eternal. By the 3rd century CE, cracks began to appear. Political instability, economic crises, and relentless invasions by tribes from beyond the frontiers weakened the empire's foundations. The very vastness that was once its greatest strength now became its heaviest burden. In 395 CE, the empire officially split into 2 halves: the Western Roman Empire, with its capital in Rome, and the Eastern Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople. The Western Empire finally fell in 476 CE, marking the end of ancient Rome's long rule. Yet its spirit did not die. The Eastern Empire endured for nearly 1,000 more years, preserving Roman law, art, and knowledge. Rome had built more than cities and armies. It had built the very idea of Europe. The roads that once carried legions would later carry knowledge, trade, and faith. Languages, laws, and governments across the continent still bear Rome's unmistakable imprint. The Roman Empire stands as a timeless monument to human ambition, a civilization that dreamed on a continental scale and left a legacy that would guide Europe into a new dawn. When the Western Roman Empire fell, Europe entered a period often called the Dark Ages, a time of fragmentation and uncertainty. But the seeds planted by the Romans lay dormant, waiting to bloom again. New kingdoms, the Visigoths, Franks, and Lombards, rose from the ashes. The Roman Church inherited the empire's structure and became a unifying force, its monasteries preserving ancient knowledge that would have otherwise been lost. In the East, the Byzantine Empire carried the torch of civilization, guarding the treasures of Greek and Roman thought. Meanwhile, the rise of Islam brought a new wave of intellectual discovery, as scholars translated and expanded upon the works of ancient masters. When this knowledge returned to Europe, it sparked the Renaissance, a rebirth of art, science, and philosophy. Thinkers and artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo saw themselves as heirs to that classical spirit of creation. The ancient ideals of democracy and law, born in Greece and perfected in Rome, continue to influence governments around the world. The story of ancient Europe is the story of how humanity learned to think, to build, to question, and to believe. It reminds us that every age builds upon the dreams of those who came before. Today, when we walk the streets of modern cities, we walk through history. The ancient world may have faded, but its spirit endures in our laws, our languages, and our ideals. A timeless journey from the dawn of history to the promise of tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey through history as fascinating as I did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories from our incredible past. We'll see you next time.